All right, welcome in. This is an original Tales First story, and we're jumping straight into it. Let's begin.
After an accident, my 7-year-old daughter needed urgent surgery. My in-laws said, "Sign over the house and the company, then we'll pay." I signed everything without hesitation. They thought they'd won. Then their lawyer looked at the papers and turned pale. The hospital conference room smelled like bleach, stale coffee, and the kind of fear that makes your mouth taste metallic. It wasn't a big room. 2 plastic chairs, a table that looked like it had survived 3 pandemics, and a framed photo of a beach that was definitely meant to calm you down and was instead insulting. Like, sure. Let me relax while my life falls apart. Thank you, Mr. Palm Tree. My in-laws Carol and Gary sat across from me like they were waiting for a contractor to arrive and give them a quote. Carol had her purse placed neatly beside her chair, strap folded. Gary's hands were clasped on the table. Calm. Controlled. Not the kind of people who looked like they'd just lost their son. My husband's sister Amanda was there too, perched beside them, scrolling through her phone like the whole thing was a mild inconvenience. She looked fine. Too fine. Her mascara wasn't even smudged. Mine was probably on my chin. The notary, or maybe he was a lawyer, or maybe he was just a man in a suit who had chosen to become a professional parasite, sat at the end of the table with a folder. A thick one. The kind of folder that says, "Someone planned this." He slid papers toward me and clicked a pen like we were closing on a house. Not my house, though. My house. I signed what they wanted me to. I signed quickly, because the clock on the wall was loud even when it wasn't ticking. Because someone had said the words "deposit required" and "window closing" and "best chance." Because my daughter was in a hospital bed down the hall and the world had become a tunnel with one exit. Surgery. Carol watched the pen move like it was a magic wand. Like each signature was a spell she'd been waiting for. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly, the way you talk to a toddler surrendering a toy. I didn't answer. I couldn't trust my voice not to turn into something ugly. When I finished, Carol gathered the pages like they were receipts from a shopping spree. Gary exhaled, relieved. Amanda finally looked up and smiled, small and satisfied, like she'd just won something she'd always deserved. And me? I sat there for 1 second longer, staring at the last place my signature dried. This is insane, I thought. But I signed anyway. Earlier that day, I didn't know my life could split in half so fast. I didn't know that grief could be a siren. I didn't know that paperwork could be a weapon. I only knew there had been an accident. I remember the hospital entrance doors opening and closing like lungs. I remember fluorescent lights turning everyone a shade of sickly. I remember a nurse saying, "Rachel?" and my body moving before my mind caught up. And I remember the doctor's face when he spoke about my husband Adam. He didn't say the word dead at first. People rarely do. They say things like, "We did everything we could," and "I'm sorry," and "He didn't make it." Adam didn't survive. My husband was gone. My brain tried to reject the sentence like it was a typo, but then he said Isla's name. And that word, my daughter's name, pulled me back into my body like a hook. "Your daughter is alive," he said. "She's stable, but she's seriously injured." Alive. Stable. Injured. Those words were everything. I found Isla behind a set of double doors, surrounded by machines and tubing, and the quiet urgency of people who work in emergencies like it's Tuesday. Because for them, it is. Isla looked impossibly small in that bed. She had a blanket pulled up to her chest and a little strip of tape on her cheek holding something in place. Her eyelashes were still too long for her face. The kind of eyelashes you don't buy, you just get lucky with. I touched her hand. It was warm. Real. And I promised her, in my head, because I couldn't trust my mouth yet. "I've got you." Then the doctor came back with the part no one puts in movies. "There are 2 options," he said. Of course there were. There's always an option that's slower and an option that's better. An option that's covered and an option that isn't. An option that comes with paperwork and an option that comes with a price tag. He explained it quickly, not coldly, just efficiently, like time itself was a limited resource he was trying not to waste. Option 1, standard treatment, slower timeline, higher risk of complications, Option 2. A specialist team, faster surgery, better outcome. But there was a deposit. A big one. A number that landed in my lap like a brick. I nodded as if numbers couldn't scare me, as if I couldn't feel my throat tighten. It's fine, I said automatically. Because it should have been fine. Adam built a company. We had a house. We were not people who couldn't cover a deposit, so I walked to a corner, pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and tried to transfer money. The screen loaded. Then it locked me out. I tried again. I tried a different card. I tried the joint account. Declined. It was our account in practice, but legally it was Adam's. I called the bank. I sat in a plastic chair under a poster about hand washing and listened to hold music that sounded like it had been recorded in 1998. When a woman finally answered, I said, "My husband," and the words caught, and I had to swallow and try again. "My husband passed this morning. I need access to our account." There was a pause, a keyboard clicking. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am," she said in the tone of someone who has said it 100 times today. "Due to the account holder being deceased, there are restrictions. You'll need to provide documentation." "Documentation?" I repeated, blinking like she'd said I needed to provide a dragon. "Death certificate, probate paperwork, executor." "My daughter needs surgery," I said, my voice getting sharp before I could stop it. "Today." "I understand," she said, and I could hear the script in her voice. "But I can't override the policy." Policy. I tried the business account next. I tried the card tied to it. I tried the online portal. "Authorized signer only," the screen told me, as if I didn't already know who signed everything. Adam. Not me. On paper, we had money. In real life, we had a locked door and a ticking clock. I didn't cry then. I didn't have time. That was when Carol and Gary arrived. They looked solemn at first, the way people look when they know they're supposed to. Carol's hand fluttered toward my shoulder, the gesture of comfort without the commitment. "Oh, Rachel," she breathed. Gary nodded once, like grief was a business meeting and he'd just heard the agenda. Amanda came in behind them, eyes slightly puffy, hair perfect, phone in hand. They asked where Isla was. They asked what the doctor said. They said, "This is horrible," and "We'll get through this," and the words sounded correct. I didn't suspect anything yet, because why would I? I turned to them, exhausted and desperate and still believing in basic human decency, and said the most obvious thing in the world. "Can you cover the deposit?" I asked. "Just until things unlock. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. I just need—" I swallowed. "I just need her in surgery." I expected an instant yes. They had money. They weren't struggling. They drove expensive cars and wore expensive watches and lived like the world owed them comfort. And this was their granddaughter. Carol didn't say yes. Carol didn't say no either. She made a face like I'd asked her to co-sign a mortgage. "Let's not rush," she said. Gary leaned in. "We need to think," he added. Amanda stayed quiet, watching me the way you watch a cashier ring up an item you thought was on sale. I stared at them. "Think?" I repeated, like the word didn't belong in the room. Carol patted my hand. "We'll handle it," she said, as if I was being silly. "Just wait." So I waited, because I had no choice. 30 minutes, then 40, then an hour. I sat beside Isla's bed and listened to machines breathe for her. I watched nurses move with quiet competence. I tried the bank again. Nothing. A billing coordinator appeared at the doorway at one point, clipboard in hand, smile tight. "Any update on the deposit?" she asked. I nodded like I had control of my life. "Soon," I said. And then Carol returned with a man in a suit and a folder. "Come with us," she said. Not please, not can we talk. Just, come with us. They led me to a small room, the same room where I would later sign my life away next to a picture of a beach. The suited man sat down. The folder opened. Carol's voice turned smooth. "We'll pay," she said. "But we need you to sign these." "What is this?" I asked, staring at the papers. "The car, the house, the company," she said, like she was reading a grocery list. My mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. "Why?" I finally managed. A formality, Carol said, voice gentle, reaching for my hand like we were on the same side. We'll cover the deposit today. I just need you to sign these papers so everything stays orderly. No drama. No fighting. Not now. Not after Adam. For Isla's sake. Amanda nodded along. It just makes sense, she said, like she was discussing a seating chart. I looked down at the pages again. Carol had said papers the way you say napkins, like they were harmless. They weren't. Because the words on the first page weren't about paying a hospital bill. They were about ownership, about control, transfer, assignment, waiver of claim. In plain English, sign here and the house is theirs. Sign here and the company is theirs. My hands were cold. This is your granddaughter, I said, keeping my voice low. You're not lending me money. You're asking me to sign away Adam's house and Adam's company. Carol's smile didn't move. Rachel, it's just paperwork. We're trying to make sure this doesn't turn into an ugly mess later. Ugly mess. While my child lay injured down the hall, I stepped out and called a lawyer friend, someone I knew wouldn't soften the truth just to spare my feelings. They listened for 5 seconds and then said, Rachel, do not sign that. This is bad, they said. We can find another way. I pressed my forehead to the wall. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and cheap air freshener. I looked at the clock. I thought of Isla's hand in mine. Then I went back in. I asked one practical question. If I sign, straight away? Carol didn't hesitate. The moment you sign. So I signed. And the next time I held my daughter's hand, the deposit was finally moving. I know it looked like panic from the outside, like desperation. Like a woman signing away her entire life with a shaking hand and a prayer. And honestly, I didn't correct anyone. Let them think it. Because Carol and Gary didn't just take the house and the company, they took something else too, something they didn't understand, didn't ask about, and definitely didn't read closely enough to notice. Soon they would find out, and their lives would begin to spiral. But to understand what happened, we have to rewind. Because the trap didn't start in that hospital. It started years earlier, long before the accident, long before Isla's hospital bed, long before Carol decided my daughter's surgery was a bargaining chip. Adam wasn't the kind of man who took up space loudly. He didn't walk into a room and demand attention. He didn't charm people with big speeches. He didn't sell dreams like they were lottery tickets. He just showed up. Every day. Did the work. Built things slowly. And because of that, he was easy to underestimate. Even by his own family. I met Adam in the most romantic way possible, through regular life. A mutual friend, a casual conversation, one of those moments where you don't know you're stepping onto a new path until you're already walking it. He was steady. He listened more than he talked. He remembered small things, what I liked, what I didn't, what made me laugh. He was the kind of person who didn't need to prove he was good, because he actually was. The first time I met Carol and Gary, I thought, okay, they're proper. That's the word. Carol had perfect posture and perfect manners, and a perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. Gary shook my hand like he was testing my grip. They asked me polite questions that felt like interview questions. Where did I grow up? What did I do? What were my plans? And then Amanda entered the room and everything shifted. Just slightly. Carol's face softened. Gary's voice warmed. Their attention snapped to her like a magnet. Amanda was the favorite in the way some families don't even try to hide. She could spill something and it was cute. Adam could bring home an accomplishment and it was nice, dear. Amanda was praised easily. Adam was teased. Carol would smile and say things like, Adam has always been so serious. Gary would laugh like it was a joke. But the joke always landed on Adam. Amanda would tell a story, and Carol would beam like she'd personally invented her. Adam would talk about work, and Gary would nod like he was hearing a weather report. I noticed it early. Adam pretended he didn't. Or maybe he really didn't, because when you grow up in something, it feels normal. Like gravity. We got married and started building a life that didn't revolve around their approval. Then Isla was born, and if you've never watched someone become a mother, let me summarize. Your world shrinks down to one small person and everything else becomes background noise. Carol and Gary were thrilled, on the surface. In public, Carol was the perfect grandmother. Photos, smiles, my sweet girl. In private, it was selective. It wasn't that they screamed at Isla or said anything that would get them kicked out of a polite society dinner party. They weren't villains with mustaches. They were worse. They were people who could look you in the eye and say something harmless that left a bruise. It started with her name. Isla is not a difficult name. It's 4 letters. It's a name you can learn in a single breath. Carol never learned it. Or she learned it and chose not to use it. She called her Isla. At first I corrected her gently. It's Isla. Adam corrected her too. Mom, it's Isla. Carol would laugh lightly like we were all sharing a joke. Oh, you know me, she'd say. Terrible with names. But she never forgot Noah and Chloe's names. Noah and Chloe, Amanda's children, were spoken like sacred words, pronounced perfectly, said with warmth. Isla's name kept getting twisted, and then something happened that made my stomach go cold in a way I still remember. Isla started answering to Isla, not because she thought that was her name, because she wanted the correction to stop, because she wanted to be easy. Children learn what earns them love, and what earns them peace. The second moment I couldn't unsee came at a birthday. Isla was old enough to know what she liked. She had opinions, she had favorites. She talked about them constantly like small children do, because small children believe the world should be updated on their interests. Carol and Gary gave her a gift bag with tissue paper and a smile. Inside was something clearly meant for a toddler. The box literally had an age range on it that Isla had outgrown years ago. Isla paused. Just a tiny pause. The kind only a mother notices. Then she plastered on a smile and said, "Thank you." Too brightly, too fast, like she was trying to outrun disappointment. Noah and Chloe opened their gifts next. Exactly what they wanted. Thoughtful. Specific. The kind of gifts you only buy if you've paid attention. Carol clapped her hands. "I knew you'd love it," she cooed at Chloe, like she'd just won an award for grandmothering. Isla sat quietly with her toddler toy, smiling like she'd been trained. And then there was the outing. Carol and Gary planned a big kids' day for Noah and Chloe, one of those places designed to drain your wallet and your will to live, rides and animals and sugar and chaos. They talked about it in front of Isla like she wasn't there. "Oh, Chloe is going to freak out when she sees the dolphins," Carol said. Noah bounced in his seat, excited, asking a million questions. Isla's head lifted. "Can I come too?" she asked. Hopeful in that fragile way children are hopeful, like they still believe the answer might be yes. Carol blinked like Isla had just spoken in a foreign language. "Oh," she said casually. "We already planned it." Then with a laugh, "We didn't think you'd want to." Isla's face changed. Not into tears. Not into anger. Into something smaller. Something practiced. And I remember thinking, she's getting used to this. That was the moment I stopped telling myself I was being sensitive. That was the moment I started paying attention in a different way. Adam built his business during all of this. He started small. Just him, a laptop, a lot of long nights. It grew slowly. Employees came. Real responsibilities, real money, real pressure. And I was involved. Not as a figurehead, as the person who made sure things didn't fall apart behind the scenes. I wasn't the CEO. Adam was. But I was in the day-to-day. I knew how it ran. I knew what was real and what was noise. I knew the company's reality, not just the image it projected. And as the business grew, Carol and Gary changed. Not dramatically, subtly. They started showing up more, asking more, advising more. They started talking about family and legacy, and somehow that always led back to Amanda. Amanda should have stability, Carol would say. Amanda should have a stake, Gary would suggest. The house is so big for you two, Carol would muse, like she wasn't speaking about our home. It was never a direct demand. It was always a thought, a concern, a suggestion. But the pattern was obvious. They didn't ask, they pushed. Adam didn't give in. He stayed polite. stayed calm, stayed firm. And Carol and Gary stayed polite too, right up until they had leverage. Then the car accident happened. Adam died. Isla survived but was badly hurt, and Carol, Gary, and Amanda showed up composed, talking about handling things and next steps. And they did not show up with the kind of care I expected for Isla. I knew the company better than they ever did. I knew something they didn't know. And if they had known what I knew, they never would have pressured me to sign anything. A month later, Isla was physically recovered. Back to her routines. Back to school. Back to eating cereal like it was a food group and not a personality trait. Emotionally, that took longer. It always does. But she was alive. She was home. And every time I watched her run down the hallway in our small apartment, I felt something in my chest unclench. We lived in a place that was fine. Small. 2 bedrooms. Thin walls. A kitchen where if you opened the fridge and the oven at the same time, you'd probably create a new kind of physics. But it was ours. The big house we used to live in before the accident, and Adam's company now belonged to Amanda and my in-laws. On paper, anyway. And then I saw it online. Amanda posted photos in my former house. Noah and Chloe smiling on the staircase I used to vacuum. Carol in the living room I used to decorate. Gary grilling in the backyard where Isla used to chase bubbles. Captions like, new home, fresh start, blessed, with no mention of me or Isla. Not even a polite lie. Not even a, we're grateful. Just ownership. Like it had always been theirs. Then photos at the company. Carol, Gary, and Amanda posing in front of the logo like they were the founders. Smiling at desks. Shaking hands with employees who probably didn't know whether to laugh or update their resumes. It looked perfect from the outside. It stung. But I didn't spiral. I watched it with a calm that surprised even me. They were celebrating too early. I just didn't explain why yet. When Isla was stable, really stable, I met with my lawyer. Her name was Sofia Calderon, and she had the kind of calm that made you feel like the world could be on fire, and she'd still have a plan. I brought documents from the business. Things I understood because I'd worked there and I knew the finances. Sofia read quietly, turning pages, making small notes. Then she stopped. Her face didn't go dramatic. She didn't gasp. Sofia wasn't that kind of person. But her eyes narrowed in a way that meant something had just clicked. This company owes you a huge amount of money, she said. I watched her, waiting. Sofia looked up. Did you know this when you signed everything over? Yes, I said simply. Sofia blinked once, then leaned back slightly like she'd just met a woman who played chess for fun. You worked there, she said. I know the company inside out, I answered. I knew exactly what I was signing. Sofia's expression shifted from concern into something like impressed disbelief. Then she pointed to a number on the page. $842,600, she said. Sofia said it in disbelief. Carol and Gary didn't just take the company. They signed personal liability for it, which means if the company can't pay, they have to pay out of their own money. I smiled, small and controlled, because sometimes the universe gives you a gift and you don't want to scare it away by reacting too loudly. Now, if you're wondering how signing away everything could end up being good for me and a trap for them, here's how. Over the years, Adam and I put money into the company as a loan, not a gift, not charity, not help. A loan. The company got a written, I owe you, a promise to pay us back. And that promise doesn't disappear just because new people take over. Whoever owns the company still owes that loan. So when Carol and Gary took the company, they took what it owed too. Sofia tapped the documents. It's documented, she said. It's enforceable. She looked at me again. Rachel, you didn't lose money with that deal. I lifted one shoulder. I know. You actually made money. I know, I repeated. Because I did. And because saying it out loud still felt like touching a bruise to check if it was real. When Isla was stable, I was ready. Sofia drafted a formal demand letter for repayment of $842,600. Then she sent it. Carol and Gary called me after they received it. They were outraged, confused, loud in that controlled way where they try to sound superior while their world tilts. This is ridiculous, Carol snapped. This is a scam. Gary's voice was tight. What is this? Some kind of joke? They didn't fully understand yet what it was or why it was valid. They only saw the number and the demand. I stayed calm. I didn't debate. Talk to Sophia, I said. Get your own lawyer. Then I hung up. They still hadn't grasped what this really meant. Not yet. They were stuck on the number, on the audacity of it, on the idea that I was somehow bluffing. But the number was on the table now. In ink. In writing. With a deadline, and people like Carol and Gary don't stay confused for long. They get angry. They get strategic. They look for a way to make you blink first. I had a feeling the silence wouldn't last. A few days passed. I kept life normal for Isla. School pickup, dinner, homework, bedtime stories, the kind of routine that feels boring until it's the only thing holding you upright. The calm felt like before a storm. Then there was a knock at my apartment door. A man in a suit stood there with a clipboard and a sealed packet. Isla peeked around my leg, wide-eyed. Rachel Morgan? He asked. Yes, I said, and my stomach sank before I even knew why. He held out the packet. These are for you. I hesitated, just for a beat, then took it. You've been served, he said, already turning away like this was just another delivery. I looked down at the first page. Big, bold words jumped off the paper. Fraud. Misrepresentation. Demand to withdraw. Isla's voice went small. Mom? What is that? I swallowed. Nothing to worry about, I said, because that's what mothers say when they're lying through their teeth. I took the papers to Sophia. She read the first page, then the second, then gave me that calm look lawyers save for people who are about to spiral. It's a scare tactic, she said. They're trying to intimidate you into backing off. I exhaled, but it didn't feel like relief. More like my lungs were finally catching up. So, I said carefully, aiming for a joke and not quite landing it. I'm not about to be arrested in front of my kid. Sophia's mouth twitched. No, Rachel, you're not. She tapped the paper. They're alleging fraud and demanding you withdraw the repayment claim. They want you to blink first. That's all this is. And we don't blink, I said. We respond, she corrected, already reaching for her pen. Formally. Cleanly. And you do not contact them directly. I went home and tried to believe her. I still felt the unease sitting under my ribs, because I knew this wouldn't be their last move. Then the flying monkeys started calling, relatives texting. How could you do this to family? Calls from people who hadn't spoken to me in years, but suddenly had opinions. With some, I didn't explain. I ended the conversation. With people I cared about, I said the truth. They used Isla's surgery as leverage, I said. They made me sign while she was fighting for her life. If anyone behaved fraudulently, it wasn't me. Some went quiet. Some didn't believe me. I stopped caring. Then came the part that made my hands shake. I went to pick Isla up from school. And there they were. Carol and Gary standing near the entrance like they belonged there, talking to my daughter. They had never shown up at her school before. That was why I hadn't even thought to remove them from anything. They'd never been involved like that. Isla saw me and her face crumpled. Not into crying, but into worry. That same practiced worry I hated. In the car, she asked the question that made my stomach flip. Mom, did you steal money from them? She said quietly. They said you're a fraud. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Not tears. Rage. How dare they? How dare they use her again? I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I did the only thing that matters when someone tries to poison your child's mind. I stayed steady. No, baby, I said. I didn't steal anything. Isla's voice trembled. They said you're trying to take their house. I exhaled slowly. They're lying, I said. And they're not allowed to talk to you anymore. Not ever. That afternoon, I acted immediately. I removed my in-laws from pickup lists and contact permissions. Through Sophia, I sent a formal notice. A cease and desist. A clear line in writing. I kept my daughter close for days afterward, not smothering her, just present. Stable. A week has passed. Then there was another knock on my door. Carol, Gary, Amanda. All three of them on my doorstep like a family portrait. Carol holding a cake. Amanda holding a gift bag. Gary wearing the face of a man who wanted to be anywhere else. They acted sweet. Performed loving family. We were grieving, Carol said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere if you weren't paying attention. We weren't thinking, Gary added. Amanda's eyes flicked past me into the apartment like she expected to be invited in by default, like doors still opened for her just because she showed up. Carol held the cake out a little, smile trembling in the way she practiced in mirrors. We didn't come to fight, she said softly. We brought something for Isla. Gary shifted behind her, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who would rather be anywhere else than standing on my welcome mat pretending. Amanda lifted the gift bag like proof of good intentions. Tissue paper, a ribbon, the whole performance. We miss her, Carol added, voice thick. We've been sick about all of this. We haven't been thinking straight. I didn't move aside. Carol tried again, gentler. Can we come in for a minute? Just a minute. We don't even have to talk about anything heavy. We just want to see her. Please. Isla wasn't home, and Carol didn't know that yet. She's not here, I said. A beat of silence. Carol's smile faltered, then snapped back into place. Oh, she said too quickly. Well, that's all right. We can wait. We can come back. Amanda's jaw tightened. Gary glanced at Carol like, say it. Carol took a slow breath, and her tone shifted. Still soft, still reasonable, but now aimed like a blade wrapped in velvet. Rachel, she said, this has gotten out of hand. She sighed like she was the victim of my behavior. We don't want this to become ugly. There it was. Not the ask yet, just the runway. We've already been through enough, she continued. All of us. You don't want to drag this into court, do you? Think about what that does to Isla. And then, finally, carefully, like she was placing something fragile on the table. We just need you to stop this, she said. Drop the claim. Let's put it behind us. I stared at her. You used my daughter's surgery to make me sign away my life, I said quietly. Then you went to her school and put your mess in her head. Carol opened her mouth, outraged, offended, wounded. I didn't let her start. There is no behind us, I said. You don't get to show up with cake and pretend you didn't do that. Gary's face hardened. Amanda looked like she wanted to spit. I kept my voice even. You wanted paperwork. You wanted leverage. You got it. Then I closed the door. Not slammed, not dramatic, just closed, like a period at the end of a sentence they didn't like. I stood there for a second, listening to their shoes shuffle away. Then I turned back toward my kitchen and the half-finished homework on the table. Because Isla was still a kid, and Carol didn't get to turn my entire life into her stage. 2 days later, Sophia called again. They want to settle, she said. No small talk. Sophia never wasted words on people who didn't deserve them. Good, I said. What are they offering? They'll sign everything back, Sophia replied. The company, the house. I paused because the audacity almost deserved respect. Almost. They're calling it making things right, Sophia added, and I could hear the quotation marks in her voice. Tell them no, I said. Sophia waited. No? That's not a settlement, I said. That's undoing what they did. Silence. Then Sophia. What are your terms? 150,000, I said, on top of signing everything back. Sophia didn't argue. She just breathed out once, like she'd been waiting for me to stop being polite. I'll send it. 3 hours later, she called again. Carol is furious, Sophia said. She says you're being cruel. Gary says you should be grateful. Amanda says she doesn't understand why you're doing this. I almost laughed. And what did their lawyer say? Sophia's tone sharpened. He reminded them what they signed. The loan is due $842,600. And because they signed personal liability when they took control, it doesn't stop with the company if the company can't pay. I pictured Carol's face when she finally understood what personal liability meant in plain English. Let me guess, I said. They got quiet. They got very quiet, Sophia confirmed. The next morning, Sophia texted. They accepted. Notary Friday. Wire confirmed. Friday, we met at a small office that smelled like toner and lemon cleaner. Carol arrived polished but pale. Gary looked like he hadn't slept. Amanda clutched her purse like it was the last thing she still owned. No cake this time. Sophia slid the papers across. Company back to Rachel, house back to Rachel, settlement payment, $150,000, and Rachel withdraws the $842,600 claim in full. Mutual release. Carol's pen hovered. Her hand trembled, just a little. Then she signed. Gary signed. Amanda signed last, jaw tight, eyes burning. I signed steady. Sophia glanced at her phone. Wire's in, she said quietly. I didn't smile in the room. I just nodded once, because I was done giving them reactions for free. That night, Isla curled up on the couch beside me and asked what we were having for dinner like the world had always been safe. And for the first time in a long time, it was. 6 months later, Isla and I were living in the house again. We'd moved back the same week the papers were signed. Fast, quiet, no celebration. The house didn't feel like victory. It felt like something we'd fought to breathe inside. Some nights it still hit me in the ribs that Adam wasn't coming home. Grief doesn't care what a notary stamped. It just shows up anyway in the quiet moments, like when I reached for his mug without thinking, or when Isla laughed and for half a second I expected to hear him laugh back. But Isla was healing. Not perfectly. Not all at once. Just steadily. One night she climbed into my lap, held my face in both hands and asked, They can't make us leave again, right? No, I told her. They can't. And for the first time, I believed it without checking the locks twice. The company stabilized too. Not magically, just because I knew how to do the work. The boring stuff. Payroll, clients, problems that got handled instead of posted about. I heard through a cousin that Carol and Gary's world didn't recover the way they expected. People found out what happened. The hospital papers, the school stunt, the fraud talk. Invitations dried up. Smiles went cold. Money got tight. Amanda stopped posting blessed captions like they meant something. Adam is still gone. That part never gets fixed. But Isla is safe. We are home. So tell me, did I go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.